Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, October 19th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Iowa game is in 3 days, the game against Michigan in 38 days. That Iowa game is not necessarily the most anticipated game on the Ohio State schedule. That would obviously be the second one we just mentioned there. But there is certainly a lot to talk about with the Hawkeyes because their defense is going to present some real challenges, it sounds like for the Ohio State offense this weekend. My guest today, Kevin Noon of BuckeyeHuddle.com. We just finished talking to Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, Kevin Wilson. A lot to talk about coming out of that one. I think the first thing, Kevin, was red zone. Red zone is, obviously a big topic for any football team. It's an area where Ohio State has really, really succeeded this year. Only 2 field goals. Every other time they've been down there, they've scored touchdowns. But Iowa presents a little bit of a different challenge down there.
Yeah, Iowa's allowed 8 scores in the red zone, 4 field goals, 4 touchdowns. They just haven't allowed a lot of points to begin with, but there certainly are a lot of challenges when you get in the red zone. And with Iowa running a long-time defense, everybody knowing what's going on there, and, not to get ahead of myself, you have less space to work with. So one of the biggest, most important things is staying on schedule. I mean, if you're going to run the ball, don't be in a 3rd and 8 type of situation from the 12, because you're going to be running into a lot of issues there. Ohio State's been able pretty much to score at will in the red zone so far, but this is by far going to be the most defensively sound defense that they're going to be going against.
And, this is, playing against not quite as good defenses is obviously one thing that has helped Ohio State succeed in the red zone. But one thing that we heard from both Day and Kevin Wilson was the other thing that's really helped them succeed in the red zone this year is the fact that they're a little bit unpredictable because they've been able to run the ball and pass the ball down there, and that makes a big difference.
Well, I remember several years through the past of where they would get into the red zone, run, get stuffed, passing completion, go for the field goal. And a much more robust running game certainly is an ally, especially when you have a quarterback in C.J. Stroud that's not going to run it short of maybe a 3rd and inches on the goal line, a situation there. So you know that you're not going to have Stroud the runner, but having Mayan Williams, having Trevion Henderson, heck, having Mitch Rossi. I mean, having all of those things. And they've not been afraid to be a little out of the box. And by calling the I formation out of the box, I mean, I grew up watching the I formation, but in today's football, it is out of the box. So the unpredictability is a real thing.
Yeah, that went from literally being the box to outside of the box in the span of 25 years or so. So yes, everything is old, is new again. Bell-bottom uniform pants, maybe next year.
Get some tearaways.
There you go. Maybe we'll see. Those good mesh jersey tops. Yes, I think definitely overdue for those again. Something else that is that I think Ohio State's been a little overdue for is Jaxon Smith-Njigba healthy and on the field. Ryan Day didn't give any real injury updates on Tuesday during the press conference, but so far there is no indication that Jaxon Smith-Njigba won't be back this weekend. We'll get a further update later in the week, but I think it sounds like my sense is they're kind of planning on having him back this week. What does that bring? What does it mean for the offense if you do get Jaxon Smith-Njigba back on the field?
I wondered. First of all, we were told that Jaxon Smith-Njigba, if he was healthy, would still be considered a starter. So that's good to know. We've also talked to Ryan Day in the past, and he's talked about having Jackson play. So I think all those Jackson plays come back into play. Plus, too, what you're able to get out of Emeka Egbuka, what you're able to get out of Julian Fleming, what you're able to get out of Marvin Harrison Jr. and guys like that. So it gives them a lot more flexibility because you have another guy in the mix, but you also have to you don't want to get into a situation of where you're trying to force it to JSN just because he's out there. Okay, we've got to make up for lost time. Okay, he was our number 1 coming into the season. We have to target him 14 times. I think when he first comes back in anyway, he's going to be on a bit of a pitch count. I would assume, see how he responds, and then hopefully unleash a full go JSN for Penn State the following week. But it really does give them the opportunity to have, there's pages of the playbook that they haven't necessarily been able to use, things that were unique to JSN's skill set, and all of that comes back.
Yeah, it was very interesting. Both Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson talked about the fact that you cannot go into a game or in the middle of a game say, well, we have to get so-and-so more touches. We have to, we've got to, we're running the ball too much. You have to take what the defense is giving you. If the defense is playing a couple safeties back, well, sometimes you're just going to have to run the ball. Even if you really came in with the idea, we're going to throw the ball. If the defense is telling you you should not pass the ball, you should run the ball, you should listen. That's something we heard from both Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson. Something we heard from pretty much everyone was just how fundamentally sound Iowa is. And, fundamentally sound is one of those terms where that's, you hear that thrown around for like not very athletic basketball players. This is meant as a compliment and not really as a pejorative. But, what does Iowa's defense do? Why is Iowa's defense so good? Because they are so good. They were, I think, number 3 in the country in scoring defense. And it's like everyone just kind of says, they're not going to confuse you. They're not going to. They just do what they do. So why are they so good at what they do?
I kind of put this in comparison with where Northwestern's defense used to be under Mike Hankwitz. They ran the same system for years and years and years, and there are volumes of adjustments. Okay, so-and-so did this to us in this year. This is the tweak we make to be able to get past it. So you know what Iowa's going to do. You know what you just have to get out there and outplay them, really, because you may have this wrinkle or that wrinkle. They have probably seen it. And we do see football constantly evolving, constantly changing, I formation notwithstanding. But, you go through all of that. They get guys that are able to use this system. They learn from guys who have been in the system, who've learned from guys who have been in the system. These coaches have not really had to make a lot of changes. And I think some of it, too, has to deal with the recruiting industry. Some of the guys that they get are probably 2-star, 3-star types who maybe were missed upon because of where they played their high school football or whatever reason. So, better than advertised talent on top of a tried and true defensive scheme. I think all of that goes a long way for the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, and they talk too about just the little stuff, and it's just like the eye discipline for the corners, and just you're not going to catch them making silly mistakes or corners getting caught with their eyes in the backfield. Like they're going to just do all the little things right, and you just kind of have to out execute them because they are going to try and they are just going to try and out execute you, and it has worked. For a team that plays functionally without an offense, it is pretty remarkable that they are 3-3. They've held 5 of their 6 opponents this year to 10 points or less, which is pretty darn good. Iowa definitely out-executed Ohio State the last time Ohio State played Iowa. That was back in 2017. And it doesn't seem like that long ago, but that was Ryan Day's first season on the staff at Ohio State. And it was very interesting to listen to Ryan Day talk about that. And, he's obviously in a very different spot now than he was back then. Back then, he was in the role that Corey Dennis is in now, and now he's in the role that Urban Meyer was in that day. But, what did Ryan Day remember from that Iowa game, 2017? Because it was very clear, like, oh, yeah, he remembered it, and they've been talking about it.
I believe he used the term that it's a scar.
Mm-hmm.
You don't heal from that. You go back and you look at that game, they were able to execute very well with a couple of tight ends, with T.J. Hawkinson, with Noah Fant. The thing that people don't really remember about that game, and you can read more about it in the upcoming Tale of the Tape about Iowa, is...
Where can I find that, Kevin?
You can find that on BuckeyeHuddle.com. Not a member yet? Why not? Get on board. Check us out at Buckeye Huddle. For the price of a crummy delivery pizza a month, you can get all the best Buckeye coverage. But... Iowa ran the ball for about 240 yards in that game and possessed the ball for 10 minutes longer than Ohio State did. So there were a lot of things that kind of went wrong there in that type of situation. Ryan Day remembered that they threw a pick six, like maybe on the first offensive play that they had. It was a cascading waterfall of misfortune that happened to Ohio State in that game. Not being able to cover tight ends, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There certainly is going to be motivation in terms of the coaches that were there for that. None of the players on the team were there for that 2017 game. That was a long time ago, I guess. But, it's certainly something that is in Ryan Day's mind.
Yeah, and it sounds like it is being discussed this week, that he's taught, it's a little bit of an object lesson, because that was the week after that big comeback win against Penn State, and Ohio State was flying high. Iowa was playing with both of its offensive tackles, and I remember driving out to that game and was like, oh, certainly they're going to kill Iowa, because Iowa is not particularly good, and they're playing without both of their starting tackles. That seems bad. And then from literally play one, it was just like, oh no, everything is going wrong all at once. That seems not ideal. So yes, I think if you were going to draw an object lesson for don't overlook Iowa, that game is a very good one. One last thing that we did get to talk to the coaches about was last weekend, getting to watch, they were spectators. They got to watch some football last week. Ryan Day watched some games at home. Jim Knowles had an interesting perspective. He was asked about the Tennessee game and the challenge that a Tennessee offense might present to Ohio State's defense. And Jim Knowles had an interesting perspective on that for a couple reasons. One, the conference where he used to coach, and two, where his daughter went to college.
Right, exactly. He said he's given a lot of money to Tennessee, and he's gotten a lot of text messages from his daughter about the Vols. But they are, a very aggressive offense. They're trying to score on every play. Then again, I thought that's what the sport was all about. Maybe not at Iowa, but you're trying to do that. But he's like, the Ohio State offense is very much like it. So I was thinking while I was sitting there listening to it, it's like I wanted to ask him something similar to it's like, do you as a defensive-minded coach at one of the biggest programs in the nation, how do you watch that game and sit there and see just this slugfest where it's just haymaker after haymaker after haymaker? But he sees a lot of things there. He compared it to some of the Big 12 stuff from when he was in Oklahoma State, that some of that mentality is there. So at least it's something he's familiar with at a pretty good level if that hypothetical matchup were to happen at some point, say at University of Phoenix Stadium, SoFi Stadium, something toward New Year's Day or a little bit later into January.
Yeah, and whether that's against Tennessee or against Alabama can put up some points as well. Georgia can put up some points as well. Yeah, there are a lot of teams out in that southeastern region that can put up some points as well. Ohio State, though, can also put up some points. Knowles talked about the fact that, he was asked sort of about the fact that they haven't really played any particularly great offenses so far this season, but he talked about the value, just the incredible value they get and how much they evaluate just going up against that the Ohio State offense every day in practice, and how much that is something that prepares them, even if the Iowa offense isn't necessarily a great prep for what they might face against Tennessee in some hypothetical future matchup. What they're doing on Monday and Tuesday, here in the Woody, that prepares them a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those tired cliches out there in sports. Well, we get better because of who we're facing every day in practice and who we go against in the off season, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there is a lot of truth to it as you look at the Big Ten maybe being devoid of offense in several of its programs, that this defense, when it's good on good, they're going against great. They're going against the number one scoring offense in the nation at 48.8 points per game. They're going against a top 20 run offense, a top 20 pass offense. I mean, I think they're third in total offense in terms of yardage, which of course is not an indicator because nobody asks you at the end of the day, well, how many yards did you get? But 48.8 points per game is mighty. Only Ohio State nationally has gone out and beat all of its opponents by double figures. So it does a lot for the defense when you're going against the minds that are on that side, the athletes that are on that side, and just having to go against them day after day after day after day. They've scouted you, you've scouted them, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and we'll see if Ohio State, it'll be pretty meaningful if Ohio State can get to 48.8 points this weekend against that Iowa defense. And with the Iowa offense playing the way they want to do, they talk about complementary football. Iowa wants to control the ball, keep your offense off the field, put a lot of pressure on your offense in a more limited number of possessions. We'll see how Ohio State responds to that. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff to talk about this week. We are just getting started. We will be back at the Woody on Wednesday night for player interviews, and then Thursday our lightning round with Ryan Day, and then of course the game coverage on Saturday. We'll have our usual pregame show. Game kicks at noon. Have a post-game show at a nice, responsible late afternoon, early evening hour. Cannot wait.
A little dinner, maybe.
Maybe a little dinner. We'll see. Yes, so it should be a very fun weekend, a very fun week. A great place to have a fun time this week would be at BuckeyeHuddle.com. As Kevin said, it is like the price of a crappy pizza every month, and you get a fantastic team of insiders, great insight, recruiting, team coverage, X's and O's coverage, all sorts of great stuff. Fantastic community, really fun and active board, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up today. And you can also follow us on YouTube. Make sure you hit the bell, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Really, really great. Lots of coverage there. We stream all the press conferences live. We have daily podcasts, preview shows, post-game shows. It's all there. That's all free. So really no reason not to do it at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. And finally, if you are listening to this on a podcast platform, make sure you are subscribed to all of our great shows. Kevin does the Big Me Kickoff. Tony Gerdeman and I do Buckeye Weekly. This, of course, Buckeyes tomorrow morning. And Alex Gleitman does the Huddle Up. You can subscribe to all those shows. Also, leave us a 5-star rating, write a review. Though that is really helpful with the magical podcast elves and their algorithms. And so that's one of those things that doesn't cost you anything and takes just a couple seconds, but really helps us out. So if you could do it, we would really appreciate it. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.